Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is NAZIRAH binti HADI. Today me and my group will present about the Jualah and Muqasah contract. First of all, I will explain about the definition of Jualah. Jualah is known as commission or reward promise. According to its etymological definition, it refers to compensation or a reward given to a person for doing a specific job. According to Imam Maliki, Jualah is described as a wage promised in return for a service that has not been carried out by someone. Next, according to Imam Shafi'i, the term is referred to a person who promised a reward to the person who is able to provide certain service to him. The first definition, which is from school of Maliki, places a strong emphasis on ensuring the success of the expected action and certainty, while the second definition of the Shafi'i school emphasizes the lack of certainty regarding the individuals who perform the expected work. Next is the definition of Muqasah. The term of Muqasah in general means equality. It is legally defined as a contract in which two debts of equal type, attribute, and settlement date are set off against each other. The other definition is Muqasah means clearance of an obligation and involves setting of debt of the debtor and creditor who is indebted to each other. Etymologically, it refers to the settlement of debt through a contract transaction of set off. Additionally, it also means the discharge of debt receivable against a debt payable. The contract of Muqasah used in Islamic banking can be explained as a rebate or reduced profit for the lender. Muqasah can be categorized the same as ibrad but slightly different. If for ibrad the creditor will give debt relief, Muqasah if debt reduction. For example, if the creditor want to settle the debt early than the agreement period, the lender will give a rebate or reduction to the remaining debt. Next, I will explain about the classification of Jualah and Muqasah. Jualah is a declaration that anyone who completes or achieves a particular task will receive a particular reward or compensation. For instance, someone who is losing his car, phone, or certificate promised to give a reward for the people who can find it. In addition, he should also say that anyone who finds his lost item will receive a reward of 500 ringgit. This definition makes it clear that Jualah is a promise to provide a specific compensation for a task which cannot be legally avoided by the person who offered the task. It is also acknowledged that it is a unilateral contract between the offerer, and it is obvious that sometimes the title of the Jualah contract is given after the offerer has paid the reward for the complete task. Other than that, the Jualah contract is presented as a master contract in some Islamic bank product, which in some places it also referred to as a supporting contract. Additionally, this agreement is being used as the main contract. In some Islamic bank product, the Jualah is also used as a secondary supporting agreement. In the classification of Islamic financial contract, this agreement is also described as the supporting contract. According to Islamic scholar, this contract which offer bank-specific service may be used as a secondary contract on the operating side of Islamic financial institution. It may also be used as a supporting contract for takaful agreement. Next, I will explain about the classification of Muqasah. Muqasah is a contract that using a counter transaction to offset a debt. It is frequently used to settle identical debts between a creditor and a debtor. Usufruct, currency, and commodity debt are typically all offset with Muqasah. They also have several types of Muqasah, which is the first type of Muqasah is mandatory set-off. Mandatory set-off is the spontaneous discharge of two debts without the consent of either party or both. This kind of Muqasah is deemed acceptable by the majority of Muslim scholars. Maliki scholars, on the other hand, believe that Muqasah should only be permitted with demand and mutual agreement. The second type of Muqasah are mandatory set-off on demand, which means they are impacted by one of the parties' demand to set off debt in order to discharge them. The third type of Muqasah are contractual set-off. Contractual set-off is also referred to as the discharge of two debts by the consent of the two parties to terminate their obligation to one another. Next, I will explain about the legal basis of Jualah and Muqasah. On the basis of the Sunnah and the Holy Quran, Jualah is permissible and can be used for a variety of things. According to most jurists, despite some of them limiting it to a reward for a return of a runaway slave, the determination of the transaction necessary aid result is thought to be sufficient to legalize it. On the other hand, Jualah is permissible according to Imam Maliki, Imam Shafi'i and Imam Hanbali based on Surah Yusuf verses 72, which mean they say we lost the king chalice and who can return it will obtain food equivalent to a camel load, and I guarantee it. Next, the legal basis of Muqasah is based on the Holy Quran. The first of the word of Allah SWT say in verses 29 of Surah An-Nisa, "You who have believed, do not squander one another wealth unfairly. Only engage in lawful business by mutual consent." In addition, Allah SWT also said in Surah Al-Baqarah verses 282, "O you who have believed, when you enter into a debt for a set period of time, record it." Additionally, Muqasah also is based on hadith. According to hadith narrated by Al-Baihaqi and Ibn Majah and verified by Ibn Hibban, Rasulullah SAW say, "In fact, selling and buying are permissible and can only be accomplished with the willingness of both parties. Every transaction must be free of coercion and based on mutual willingness. Neither party may be laid down, and whenever this occurs, the transaction is void."
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good day, my name is Nadhirah. I will continue with Jualah Muqasah according to the scholars. In Jualah contracts, one side seeks an offer and the other selects the reward. Second, obligation. One party must reward the other for performing the duty. It could also be anything we give someone for a task. Shafi'i school have essentially comparable meanings. They define Jualah as a commission for an implementable task. Jualah permissibility is debated by fuqaha. To begin with, Jualah is acceptable. Jualah contracts are legal for Imam Maliki, Shafi'i and Hanbali. According to Quranic verse, they said, "We are missing the measure of the king, and for he who produced it is the reward of a camel's load, and I am responsible for it." Next is scholars' argument. Jualah is legitimate contract according to Maliki. According to Imam Maliki, a man sets a fixed compensation for a person, then does not pay him in cash, that he will perform particular and specific job in a specific and unspecified span of time, which benefits the compensation's person. This is prescribed, so if he accomplishes the job, he will receive a reward, and when he does not complete the work, he will not receive anything, because the person who sets the compensation will receive the benefit only when the work is completed. According to Imam Al-Nawawi in Al-Majmu' Ash-Sharh Al-Muhazzab, Jualah contracts are authorized provided that the parties are aware of the commitments a person to other specified remuneration for specific work or undetermined duties that may be problematic. So the scholar's opinion in the book of Al-Bajuri Hashiyah, Jualah can be done by both parties. The Ja'il, the first party, stated its intention to accept the job, and the Majul is the latter, are willing to perform the necessary work in the first person. Next is the contract of Jualah. Whether conducted in Abdul al-Abqa or elsewhere is acceptable according to Malikiyah. We have lost the king's drinking cup, and whomever brings it will have a camel load of provisions, and I guarantee it, they claimed. Imam Ibn Kathir writes that this part of above ayah says that they also said king's glass is missing, and anyone who will return this shall be rewarded with camel load. This is derived from the base word of Jualah, and the phrase I am a guarantor is taken from of the root word kafala. Furthermore, pressure and regulations are favored unless and until our Islamic law is repealed.
Next, I will present about the Sharia scholar opinion toward Jualah. According to the Imam Hanafi, Jualah is a contract that contains uncertainty element in the time and duration of the task, which is the word and duration are hidden. But it is permissible to bring back the contract of Jualah only to a runaway slave. Imam Ibn Abi Shabah narrated, according to Abu Amir al-Shaybani, a man struck a slave who had escaped from the dead garden, and Ibn Mas'ud rewarded him with 40 dirham. Similarly, the Prophet Muhammad SAW set a reward for bringing back Abdul al-Abik. Imam Ibn Abi Shabah also narrated, according to Abu Malikiyah and Umar Ibn Dinar, the Prophet Muhammad SAW set a reward for 1 dinar for the person who brought back Abdul al-Abik, which is a runaway slave, when he was captured outside the haram. With this argument, the Hanafi have demonstrated that the contract of Jualah should only be used to bring the fugitive slave home. Otherwise, Qiyas deemed this contract to be invalid. Next is the Ibn Qudamah opinion toward Jualah in his book called Al-Mughni. The need for community require the availability of Jualah because the task which is to achieve a goal sometimes is not clear, which is the form and time of performance, such as restoring the lost boy, lost animal, and so on. In Ijarah contract, which is leasing and hiring, where people or owner need to ensure that all the missing items are returned, such as the task is not legally possible. Additionally, it will be challenging to locate anyone who will volunteer to help return without consideration. Therefore, even though its requirements, such as form and execution time, may not be entirely clear, the community need to push for contract like Jualah and similar one. This shows that Jualah contract is very necessary in the community. Next, the Sharia scholar opinion toward Muqasah. Regarding Muqasah, scholars and Imam of Fiqh have opposing opinions. Based on Imam Hanafi, Muqasah is obligatory and voluntary. The requirement of execution is a waiver or replacement of the debt that has been made and are optional, requiring approval. Muqasah is absolute, which means that it does not regulate the equality between the two debts and instead fall between debt and debt and money. According to Imam Shafi'i, Muqasah means the similarity between two things, and if a person owns money to another and he owns it too, they are not different in wage and amount, and they are two streams together, then that is retaliation. And if they are different, it is not qasas unless it has been known by both parties. Next, we will look the opinion of Imam Baihaqi toward Muqasah. Imam Baihaqi report that when Rasulullah SAW drove the Bani al-Nadir out of Madinah, he was informed that he owned some of their money that had not yet fully matured. Then Rasulullah SAW said, Da'awu wa tuja'alu, which means write off some of the receivable and take it yearly. According to a friend, Mikat bin Aswad, he gave someone a 100 dirham loan. When Rasulullah sent it with a delegation, he was in need of the money. He requests a 90 dirham write-off from the creditor. Rasulullah declared, you have involved yourself and the other party with usury. When he discovered of this, the majority of jurists agree that the sum written off in the first hadith is equal to the sum of riba that Bani al-Nadir collected on behalf of the Jews. They disclosed this information based on account of the incident by renowned legal expert Waqidi. He wrote, Usaid bin Huzay must give Abu Rafa' Salam bil al-Haqi 120 dinar. He agreed to accept the 80 dinar principal and write off the excess. This demonstrates that the amount of Ibn al-Nadir case that was written off was profit or margin, not the principal amount. For this reason, Imam Malik expressed the opinion of Ibn Umar and Zaid bin Sabit when discussing the elimination of the part of the debt that must be paid by everyone and receiving the balance. According to Imam Malik, it is comparable to when a person extends the date on which his receivable are due and add the balance of the debt, which is unquestionable reconsidering usury.
Furthermore, Muqasah's legal foundation is founded on qiyas. Many academics hold opposing views on Muqasah. Namely, first, Muqasah is derived from isqaq type because what is missed is valid and needs to be replaced. Second, according to Imam Shafi'i, Imam Maliki as well as Imam Hanbali, Muqasah is element of Jualah due to its conditions that can be replaced or moved like Jualah requirements. Third is Al-Ibra is Muqasah. In Islam, debt relief is known as al-ibra. It indicates to release and separate yourself from anything, namely the debtor's removal of one's debt. In fiqh, al-ibra means to cancel that debt and turn it another debtor's property. Fourth, court in Muqasah. The equation in the court loan is the providing of funds as well as claims that may be equated with it due to a contract between the lender and the borrowers, requiring the borrower to pay back the debt after a set length of time. 5. Muqasah is exchange debt for debt. Whoever is found to be saddled with debt by his rival with similar terms and nature on such debt, pay back or defer it directly, not instantly or non-instantly deferred, voided if the two debts have the same value if paid, or more than at least if it is the one of the two debts, says Imam Hanbali. According to Imam Malik, releasing a debt to a person in exchange for him losing the obligation he owes him in such a similar and proper manner. According to Imam Malik also, the withholding of debt return or payments must follow the exact model as the items that were previously utilized as debt. For the term and requirement of Jualah, the compensation and contract in this scenario is known as Jualah under Sharia law, which is the law of Islam. This term refers to a commission or a reward. In Islamic finance, it is an incentive contract as opposed to a task-based fee. Although accepting the Jualah offer is voluntary, the Jualah payment is actually obligatory when the performer of Amil completes the task announced or committed by the offerer of Ja'il. Jualah was formerly used to accomplish specific objectives such as rewarding those who recover lost property, treat and recover from illness, and dig wells to find water. Today, the Jualah contract is implemented as a supplement to the Islamic banking industry. For the requirement of Jualah, one is sirah. The contract requires an expression that grants permission to perform a task either in the form of command, for instance, find my cat and bring it to my house, I will compensate you with 300 ringgit. Or in the form of stipulation, example, if anyone could find my cat and bring it to me, I will reward you Rm 300 ringgit. As a Jualah contract falls under Mu'awadah contracts, which require the specifics of iwad or exchange. Sirah also requires determining the type and amount of the promised reward. Second, in contract, Jualah can be both specific and general. If the other party has completed the required task before the announcement of the reward, he is ineligible for the reward. This is because he was considered to have completed the task voluntarily, as his actions were comparable to those of those who performed the task without consent. Simply put, if the contract is specific to one party, the other parties will not be entitled to compensation, even the task has been completed. Third is Jualah contract, only require ijab or offer. So there is no requirement for qabul or acceptance in the contract. For instance, if someone says, find my cat and I'll pay you 300 ringgit, there is no requirement for qabul or acceptance. Sirah and the other persons responded, I will find your cat for 500 ringgit as qabul. In this circumstance, the reward to be considered is the 300 ringgit reward, as mentioned in the ijab, and not the 500 reward mentioned in the qabul. Secondly, the agreement of the parties. Ja'il, or a person who offers a reward in Jualah terms, must be a party who is willing and able to enter a transaction, and not one who is unable to perform transaction for any reason, including bankruptcy. Amil, or person capable of performing the offered task under the Jualah contract, is not one of the contract's requirements. If so, when Ja'il says, whoever finds and returns my cat, I will reward him 300 ringgit. This implies that anyone can become an amil to complete the task, with the key point being that the amil must be aware of and acknowledge the offer. According to Jualah contract, the Ja'il is not required to be the owner of the lost property. Therefore, a Jualah contract is valid if someone says, I will pay 300 ringgit to anyone who finds and returns my sister's cat. In this instance, the Ja'il voluntarily agreed to pay the reward for the job. Third, regarding employment duration. Fuqaha hold divergent views on the permissibility of a Jualah contract if the party offering the Jualah specifies a time frame for completing the required task. For instance, a person states, those who returns my lost cat by today will receive 300 ringgit. According to the Shafi'i school, a Jualah contract whose duration is specified is invalid. In contrast, Hanbali consider it permissible. If Jualah for an unspecified period is permitted, then Jualah for a specified period should also be permitted. Fourth, task must involve some form of effort. Among the requirements for employment under a Jualah contract is that the work must involve some form of effort or difficulty, which is masyaqqah, in order to be completed. Therefore, if a person offers a reward to anyone who returns his lost property, and there is a person who has found the goods and is in possession of them when the Jualah is announced, that person is not eligible for the reward. This is due to the absence of effort and masyaqqah in such cases. By term, Muqasah is the provision of discount on the repayment of financing, particularly murabahah. When the debt is repaid before its maturity date, Muqasah can be given as a gift because the customer was able to repay the debt prior to its maturity. Muqasah is viewed as a form of concern for consumers, so holding Muqasah allows consumers to obtain the goods that they required at a lower cost. Muqasah is split into two sections, which is first is ikhtiyariyah, which is a contractual option agreed upon by both parties. This concept is utilized when there are differences in type, nature, strength, and weaknesses between debt payments. This can be accomplished through agreement between the debtor and creditor. Second is jabariyah, a viewpoint derived from the return on debt under specific conditions. Legal experts agree that in order to implement Muqasah jabariyah, debt must be combined in form, nature, strength, and weakness so that debt payment can be agreed upon by both parties. Nonetheless, this idea is not reflected in the concept of ikhtiyariyah. Muqasah may be granted by offering discounts on murabahah receivable and unrecognized profit margins. It also can be given directly by deducting a specified amount from total murabahah receivables and a specified amount from total profit margin. There is no provision in the contract requiring Islamic financial institution to provide Muqasah, so the parties can only provide Muqasah if they choose to. The amount of Muqasah is determined by the respective Islamic financial institutions' policies, so that the determination of Muqasah in repaying murabahah financing payments to the institution can differ from one institution to another. In addition, Islamic financial institutions are permitted not to provide Muqasah to customers who pay off murabahah financing prior to maturity. As the provision of Muqasah is a matter of policy, the Muqasah system is not usury because Muqasah does not develop and grow. This conclusion is based on etymological meaning of usury, which is to grow and develop. First, the customer has a solid track record of installment payment prior to submitting a settlement. Second, the customer meets the criteria for financing problem and difficulty making full repayment. Third, the customer enterprise has experienced a precipitous decline in revenue. Fourth, the client can no longer make principal and interest payment. Fifth, the client has declared as bankruptcy. The method of administering Muqasah. First, given at settlement, Islamic financial institutions reduce murabahah receivables and murabahah profits. Second, given following the settlement, Islamic financial institution receive a settlement of receivable from the customer and then pays the customer a discount on the settlement. That's all for me.
Assalamualaikum. My name is NURAIN FATIH Binti Muhammad NASIR. Next, I will be explain about the pillars and the conditions of Jualah and Muqasah. As for the pillars and condition of Jualah, there are 5 types, which are Syiah, declaration of consent and acceptance. Second, Ja'in, promise to give specific consideration on the result of task. Number 3, Maj'un, party that perform Jualah. Number 4, Maj'un alai, assigned task, and the last one is reward or commissions. For the implementation of Jualah to be legal, the following condition must be met. The first condition is people who promise to rewards or gift should satisfy the following criteria, namely, come of age, probity, understanding and intelligence, children, lunatic, and person who are in legal guardianship cannot exclude Jualah contract. The second condition is commissions or guarantee price should consist of something valuable or the total value are clear. Illegal property was not considered as a valuable property according to the Mazhab Maliki, Shafi'i, and also Hanbali. Before the implementation of Jualah, there are also no considerations given conditions in advance. The third condition is consent should be clearly communicated by the promise of even without speech as well as acceptance of the work to be performed. Work and a time limit to finish can be combined. As example, if someone can make a shirt in a one day, they are entitled to the declared commissions. Number 4 condition is the task expected outcome should include the clear benefit in accordance with the Sharia law. Next, the pillar of Muqasah refers to the pillars of the contract. According to the opinions of the scholars, every contract must have the following provisions, which is Syiar, by ijab and qabul, Aqidain, two parties to the contract, and al-maq'ud alayhi, object to a contract. Muqasah is conducted based on the following conditions, which is the first one is both parties in the Muqasah become the debtors and creditors for the one party. Second, both debt must be specified in the obligations. If one or both is a debt of salam or debt of dowry, then the Muqasah will not occur because there is an instability of the agreements. The third condition is Muqasah doesn't require legal provisions such as usuries or specifications of usuries, such as not holding each other obligation in exchange. Number 4, one of two debt has nothing to do with other rights of compensations as a recipient's right. Number 5 is if amount of the debt differ in Muqasah, then a debt ends. Number 6 is profits outside the time agreement will be returned to the lender. Next, we move to the application of Jualah and Muqasah in Islamic finance. The first application that occurs in Jualah is parallel Jualah contracts. A bank that accepts works can have it completed by others based on the parallel Jualah. The two contracts will be independent of one another. The bank can act as the task taker by signing a Jualah contract. It may do the work itself, but or through a parallel contract with a third party, as long as the first Jualah contract doesn't require it to. The practical process in Jualah by the Islamic banks. Jualah can be used by the Islamic bank for the several service directly or through a parallel Jualah contract with the following process, which is the customer negotiated with the bank for the performance of uncustomed works in the specific time for and rewards. Second, after conducting a cost-benefit analysis, the bank agreed to perform the works, and Jualah contract is entered into the between the bank and the customer. Number 3, the bank allocate the task taker with the expertise to perform such uncustomed work on its behalf and enter into the parallel Jualah contract with him. Number 5, the task taker completes the works and the bank pay him an agreed upon wages or rewards. The bank collect its reward from the customer who enter into the initial Jualah contract. Muqasah can be given by giving a discount on the murabahah receivables and a discount for unrecognized profit margin. Muqasah can be given directly by deducting a certain amount from the total murabahah receivable and a certain amount from the total profit margin. The Islamic financial institutions parties can only provide the Muqasah but cannot be agreed upon in the contract because there are no provisions that Islamic financial institutions is required to provide the Muqasah. The amount of Muqasah is given based on the policy of the Islamic financial institutions concerned. So the determinations of the Muqasah in the paying of the Murabahah financing payments as possible to be different from the other institution. In addition, Islamic financial institutions are allowed not to give Muqasah to customers who pay off the Murabahah financing before the maturity because the provisions of Muqasah is the policy of its institutions. In general, the criteria for the customer who are given Muqasah are as following. The first one is the customer has a good history of installment payment before submitting her settlements. Second, the customer is included in the criteria for the problem in the financing and difficulty in paying full repayments. The third, the customer has a business that has experienced a drastic decline in the business turnover. The fourth, the customer is no longer able to make a principal and installment payments. And the last one is the customer has gone bankrupt. As the conclusion, despite of the presence of volatile elements such as time, task taker, and various forms of Jualah, contract and financial product may develop further into an option to be widely used because of its flexible, non-binding nature, unlike the Ijarah contract, where the both parties are legally committed and are bound by terms and specifications stipulated in the contract. Then the method of giving the Muqasah given at the time of settlements. Islamic financial institutions reduce the Murabahah receivables and the Murabahah profits. It receives settlement from the receivables from the customer and then pay a discount on the settlement to the customer.